It is no understatement to say that Hollow Knight Silksong is the most anticipated game of the entire year, maybe even of the entire decade so far. With every passing year, the hype has only grown, and there was no doubt about one thing. Whenever this game would release, it would be a seismic event in the gaming industry. And indeed, it has been. Without any reviews or pre-orders, players have flooded Steam, PSN and the Nintendo eShop to buy and play this game, crashing the sites of the progress. Over 500,000 people are playing Silksong on Steam right now. It's absolute insanity. It's out, the wait is over. So as always, the question is, was it worth any of that hype? I played around 6 hours of this game so far, and here's what I think, having gone in as blind as possible and as necessary. Please keep in mind that these are first impressions, not final thoughts, so anything I might say here is not necessarily indicative of the entire experience. I'll only be showing footage from the first 3 areas and bosses, any more would spoil too much. Anyways, this is Hollow Knight Silksong. First thing that struck me when booting this game up is how humble it feels. After all, it is still an indie game made by a small studio, but the hype around it has given it this kind of aura of something grand and big, but it doesn't really feel that way in the game itself. Maybe because there was so little actual marketing and hardly any interviews, it feels almost detached from the hype, like it was made in isolation. In comparison to the conversation around it, Silksong is usually pretty quiet and introspective. Just like the first game, yes, but it struck me nonetheless, because the conversation is so loud. And indeed, it is just like the first game in many ways, though improved also in a plethora of aspects. Most notably, movement and animations. The movement in this game makes the first game feel stiff in comparison. Whether it's climbing ledges, sprinting, or even just changing direction, Silksong's animations are beautiful and snappy at the same time, edging closer to something like Ori without losing that distinct and precise Hollow Knight feel. A few hours in, I've only unlocked a few abilities, and they aren't groundbreaking. Sprinting, dodging and gliding, but they feel awesome to use, and the game gives you plenty of opportunities to combine them. The game is very deliberate in its pace at which it gives you these abilities. Just like the first game, it's drip-fed to you over the course of the game, so I expect as I go on that there'll be more and more, and that in the last few hours it might even feel like a totally different game. The similarities to the first game apply to the combat as well, with a few notable exceptions. You have a regular attack, which you can later swap out for a slower, more powerful one, and I assume even more different ones later on. You do this with so-called crests, which give you both a unique attack and a varying number of perk slots. Like in Hollow Knight, you can attack up, down, left and right. However, the big change lies in the downwards attack. Instead of attacking straight down, Hornet does this diagonal dash downwards. It's trickier to hit, but if you do, and even string multiple downward attacks together, it feels awesome. Another ability you earn early on is the Spear Throw, which is a powerful ranged attack that uses up your silk. A bit confusingly, there are also throwing knives that can be used with a very similar button combination. These are weaker, but do not use up silk and can be replenished when resting at benches. It's kind of confusing, and sometimes you accidentally use this regular spear throw instead of the knife throws, and it can be a bit frustrating, so I don't know why exactly this button combination is so similar. But by now you may be wondering what Silk is. Silk works similarly to the ability pool, or whatever its name was in the original game. It fills up with every landed hit and can be used to do either a powerful, in this case ranged attack, or to heal. Unlike the first game, however, Silksong seems far less generous, as healing uses up an entire bar of it and ranged attack uses up I think roughly half of it, but in the end it's still a resource to be very mindful of, in a good way I think. There are other resources in the game though which don't seem to make much sense in the way that they are balanced. Basically, there are two main currencies that you collect: steel shards and rosaries. Steel shards are dropped by almost every enemy and have very limited use so far. You can donate them in the first town, but that's mostly it. I assume they are also meant for upgrading tools and weapons, but 6 hours in I haven't done that yet and have generally not found much use for these shards. You lose a handful of them every time you rest on a bench or die, but I don't know if anything happens if you lose all of them. As for the other currency, rosaries, these are equally confusing. Rosaries are the actual main currency. You need them to unlock fast travel points and benches, as well as to purchase most items including maps and perks. In contrast to steel shards, rosaries are only dropped by specific enemy types and found in the corners of the map. They are super rare, and losing them is always a blow, because you do lose all of them upon death and have to recover them like you do with souls in, say, Dark Souls. I like the idea of being limited with these, so that every purchase feels deliberate, but the balancing doesn't feel right. Why do you get so many steel shards that you have little to no use for and so few rosaries? And also, why don't bosses drop any of them? Right now it makes for a bit of a frustrating experience, but this is something that could easily be addressed in a patch if Team Cherry chooses to do so. One thing that does not need any patching though are the boss fights, because these are phenomenal. As I said in the intro, I won't spoil too many of these, but from the beginning I think these bosses are better than what the first game served up in its opening act. Not only do they all have unique movesets and feel unique to fight, they feel perfectly placed in their respective areas with stunning environments and orgasmic soundtracks supporting them. I've fought about 5 or 6 bosses so far, and the quality has most just gone up from boss to boss, and I imagine they'll only get crazier and more difficult as the game goes on. I already mentioned the soundtrack, but I need to talk about it separately. Christopher Larkin has done another marvelous job with his soundtrack, creating an equally somber and epic set of tracks once again. The ambient music in each zone sets a melancholic tone in its own way, and while the game generally feels less depressing than the first, being more about ascending to the top instead of descending to the bottom, there's still an unmistakable sadness here. The boss music, on the other hand, is nothing short of epic. I can't really show much of it in context because I want everyone to hear it for themselves in those fights, but these tracks will absolutely find their way into my playlists for years to come. I even had the soundtrack on repeat while writing the script, and it did wonders.
Barishkava!
One last specific thing I want to mention is that Silksong feels a lot more dialogue and story heavy than the original. There are a lot more NPCs to talk to, and there is actual dialogue because Hornet, the protagonist, actually speaks, unlike the first game's protagonist. And so far I loved reading all of these exchanges, and they do actually make the world feel much more alive than that of the original game. While the gameplay structure has remained mostly the same, it's nice that Silksong sets itself apart in story and tone just enough without losing that Hollow Knight feel. There are also side quests called wishes, but these are a bit disappointing. Structurally, they are mostly just fetch quests, giving you a list of items to find and bring to an NPC. There is some light story dressing once you complete them that flashes out the world, which is nice, but I feel that so much more could have been done with these, even just as quests in their structure. That little bit of world building does go a long way, but I do feel like Silksong's strength lies much more in its actual gameplay than its world, which to me at least is a bit of a reversal from the first game. To be clear, both games have excellent worlds and excellent gameplay, but if I had to point out a key difference between the two, this would be it. Silksong is finally here, and it is actually a real video game that you can play, as unreal as that seems. In many ways it refines the mechanics of the original and offers what seems to be another finely paced adventure, and I can't wait to play more. It isn't a perfect game, however, as the resource balancing feels off and the side quests are disappointingly mundane. Generally, I also not quite convinced if this world holds up to that of the first yet. Overall though, it's too early for me to tell if I like this game more or less than the first, but I am absolutely having a blast so far, and it is a worthy successor for sure. And I am just genuinely happy that what is ultimately an indie game priced at 20 euros is finding such staggering success. This is another brick in the wall to show the big publishers that yes, people want cheaper games, they don't want to spend 80 euros to get a good game that is just bloated to all hell. Back to the game itself, if you are playing it, what do you think of it? Is it worth the hype? Is it as good as the first game? I am very eager to read some interesting comments from you. But yeah, that's it from me. I hope you enjoyed this video. I'm going to go play some more Silksong, and I hope to see you again next time.